Hey everyone, this is Blake Burton, and I just started a new podcast with my brother, Bryan. Well, how do you want to be? What do you want you to go by?
Ooh, you can call me anything. Bryan Barnett, Emotion the Poet, Typewriter Sniper. Let's stick with Bryan.
Bryan, there we go. So in this podcast, we're staying away from our stage names in a sense. Like, I go by Cupcake at the strip club. I have a side podcast. Well, I have a main podcast called the NAST podcast. I'm a podcaster, and Bryan over here, he is a artist. He's a spoken poet. How about you explain who you are?
Yep. So Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. I'm Bryan Barnett, youth development specialist. Friday after 5:01 p.m. I'm Emotion the Poet, Seattle-based spoken word artist, vocalist, beanie and sunglass avid wearer. But today I will be Bryan, accompanying my man here, Mr. Corbin Blue Jr. As
yes.
we do a good little podcast for you guys.
For sure. And the thing with this podcast, we're deep thinkers, and this is a chance to have people who are also deep thinkers to be on this podcast. It's going to be called the BBC Podcast. I'm Blake Burton. Well, it's not called the BBC. Yeah, it's called the BBC Podcast, but it means Blake Burton Conspiracies and also Bryan Barnett Conspiracies, because we both have the same initials, which is pretty freaking crazy. Mm-hmm. What are the odds of that?
Slim. Very slim.
When were you born? Like, what's your number?
I was born, so for all my astrologists out there, March 23rd, 1997.
Interesting.
Aries, Libra moon, Virgo rising, for all my people out there.
Dope.
What about you, man?
I'm November 10th, 2000. Ooh. And I think I'm a Scorpio guy.
Mm-hmm.
So in this podcast, we're going to go over an array of different topics for each episode. Today, we're going straight into the Indigo Children episode today. So that's that. Let's get started. So, Emotion, I met you like a month or two ago now, and I decided to create a side podcast called BBC, and it turned out you're into conspiracies and deep thinking. So I decided you to be my co-host for this. And a topic that we briefly talked about in my interview with you on the NAST podcast was Indigo Children. So tell the audience what are Indigo Children?
Definitely. So, I guess the best way to kind of think about it, like in regards to indigos or indigo children, or a lot of times, like the idea was kind of like if you ever seen the movie Matilda, I guess you can kind of like look at her as like a slim example of that. But basically, indigo children, this is a group of people who were kind of known as like volunteers who like came to Earth like soul-wise to be here to like lift or have a purpose to kind of bring humanity up in the sense of like positive vibration, good vibration, but bring it to honestly, shout out to Marky Mark, the funky bunch over there. But shout out to also indigos too, who came here to essentially like, bring positivity and light and like lay down like a solid foundation of like energy patterns that would essentially kind of try to rid the world of like hate and things like that, and more so bring it to where it could and should be. So like these are oftentimes like misunderstood kids or misunderstood people who are going against the traditional norms, social norms, and like understanding that their purpose is like something much greater than just the standard 9 to 5, which there's nothing wrong with that, of course, but understanding that their purpose is definitely to do something a little bit more metaphysical. So these are everyday people. This the mailman whose new baby looks like your wife's baby. This could be anybody, you know what I'm saying? But these are everyday people who just have, like a better, not necessarily a better, but definitely like a sense of the spiritual realm that like they're very tapped into, that like offers them a lot of universal energy and direction and stuff like that.
Right. And for my research, the reason why they're called Indigo Children, it's the fact that they have like a indigo blue aurora around them, aura or something.
Yeah. So definitely that, and that is exactly correct. So like the idea that like everybody kind of generates like this light or this aura around them, very similar to like the aurora borealis, which I believe that's Alaska. I believe so. Yeah. But anyways, so very similar to the way that is in the sky. This is more so like a light that exudes off of a person that can't be seen by like the regular human eye, but like can be photographed. And oftentimes like indigo children were people who had that like purplish dark deep blue indigo type aura that came off of them that like set them apart from other people or their peers and stuff like that. So that aura was essentially almost kind of like a oh hey, like you're one of us type of deal. You know what I'm saying? And that was kind of how they all banded together. And this was also like a group of people who again were like known as volunteers that came in a wave that was to come to Earth but like chose to be here. And like this is kind of why like apparently now it's like 8.5 billion people in the world, and like that, not necessarily overpopulation, but that is more so like, okay, there's something happening here as to why like we need to be here. Like more souls are coming to Earth to, you know, inhabit these people, to, you know, bring them to, you know, whatever frequency that they need to be at to be their best self, to bring the Earth up or help other people get to their next step. So that way it's more of like understanding that there is like a general connectedness between like, you know, people as opposed to a division, essentially.
When I hear you say they're coming down to Earth, that makes it seem like they're aliens, though. Is that like?
I mean, you know, you could look, but yeah, even if you think about the term alien, I mean, that's more so just a term of like not from like here or like difference or like not necessarily like being from around where like you're from. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like you think about the new kid that comes in from school,
Mexicans.
When you're Jesus. You think about the new kid that comes to school and you're like, fucking alien. You know what I'm saying? And it's like that's just because they're not from where you're from. You know what I'm saying? And that is kind of like that's where they kind of share that same idea of like not necessarily like the way that we know aliens to be of like these, you know, take me to your leader type shit, but definitely on some like, oh, okay, like indigo. So there's indigo children, there's star seeds, and crystal children. All three of these kind of come from like a multi-dimensional place where it's like this is past life energy, this is cosmic energy that is instilled in everybody, because everybody is multidimensional. Just more like indigos, star seeds, and crystal children just have a better awareness of that and how to utilize that and make that, you know, accessible and make that, you know, essentially worthwhile for themselves as well as other people or Earth or whoever it is that they inhabit with. But yeah, where they come from is like they've already been here essentially. But like, you know, when you like law of thermodynamics, you know, energy can't be destroyed but only converted into another form. You know what I'm saying? It's
right.
It's like the stardust. It's the, you know, okay, when someone dies from a long time ago, instead of them going up, you know, they just hop into the next life or hop into the
reincarnation.
Next life. Essentially, you carry all those tools, those emotions, those feelings, those frequencies into the next life and then into the next life. And as you take those things with you, you can like, you know, essentially almost like in different states of consciousness, inhabit those different parts of yourself to better serve like something that you might be going through or something that somebody else might be going through, you know. And a lot of times like the 6 degrees of separation, you can even find that within yourself through different past lives once you learn how to have that awareness, you know what I'm saying? But where we come from is like where we start and originate from, which was like within type deal, you know what I mean?
When I think of crystal children, you said, so it's like crystal children, star seeds, and indigo kids. It sounds like 70s to really, really early 90s, like TV shows type shit.
Yeah, man.
Like The Dark Crystal. You ever watch that movie?
I've never. The Dark Crystal, but I'm going to have to put that on there.
Oh, my God.
I'm watching a lot of Forensic Files now, but I'll make way to watch that.
Yes, The Dark Crystal is like, it's like one of those movies that's almost Muppet-like, but it's not. It's like claymation, kind of. It's like a mix. Yes, it's like it's a mixture of like claymation puppet type shit, and basically it's about like the Dark Crystal, which like has powers and shit, and that's like rules the whole land in a sense. I'm butchering it. I just watched it like recently, but basically and it's true though. Like when you think of like all that Star Kids and all that type of stuff, I feel like in a sense it was more relevant and like sought after and like appreciated in like the 70s and 80s and 90s, because that's when it originated. Like, but I did a lot of research on this. And then another thing I want the audience to understand is like me and emotion. God, I'm gonna have to call you Bryan now. Bryan.
Yeah, call me. You can call me at night if you can get hold of me.
You can call me later. But basically, what I'm gonna bring to this side podcast is that I'm more of like a skepticist towards a lot of things, and we're both open-minded people, and Bryan has different views from me, and I have different views from him, and some things will overlap with. But I like to bring a lot of logic into things, even though I'm not a fucking scientist or anything by any measure. And honestly, I hated science during science class. I hated it.
Same.
But when I did the research on Indigo Children, it was, I think I'm gonna butcher the name, but it's like Shannon Tapp or something like that, that created the book and like the premise for all this type of stuff. Do you think that plays a part though? Like, do you think Indigo Children and star seeds and all that stuff might just be another type of religion / cult type thing, just for everyone to feel like they belong to a thing, like the school shooter forums on Reddit or whatever? I don't know if that's a thing.
I mean, honestly, but I mean, I could definitely see that, because like, I don't know if like if you happen to scroll past this, but there like was a conference a few years ago where like a bunch of Indigo people all had just met up and essentially were just like shared experiences and stuff like that, but essentially like all came to a one meeting spot to like have a meeting essentially, and like break bread and fellowship. So very similar to I guess what you would do like at a Sunday service, or like even in any type of cult where everybody with a very shared idea or a common goal would all come together to have somebody lead them in discussion that would maybe have like go towards furthering that goal. So I mean, I could definitely see that. I think too, it's for people like myself, like I definitely identify as a young indigo individual, young indigo man myself. Also a young black man too, but we'll come to that. But anyways, I think for other people like myself, I think we could definitely look at it like that. But I think a lot of us also, I don't want to speak for everybody else, but I know for myself, like I came into this more because of my separation from the church and those and like different systems like that and whatnot, and more so finding something that I could understand, like the power that I had within. So like oftentimes people will say like education is key, or like educate yourself, or go to you go to church and get educated or something. But the root word of educate is actually educe, and educe means to bring out within. So more so for myself, to educate or to educe on something that I thought was as prolific as looking for a higher power or a higher consciousness, I was able to educe and find that within myself. And that was ultimately what it, led me away from the church, not necessarily divided me from the church, because a lot of, indigo beliefs, a lot of star seed beliefs, a lot of crystal children beliefs, but all in all, those are just labels. But a lot of those all do come, are very similar and synonymous with, what you'll find biblically or, in different religions and stuff like that. But ultimately, like we being, myself in the different past lives that I've lived, like found that power from within, and were able to like almost preach a gospel that type of way. You know what I'm saying?
What I found interesting, and this would be like even going against what I just said about it being like a cult or religion, the fact after watching some like documentaries on this topic, Indigo Children can be like, oh, you're an Indigo child too. So it's not like something you just believe in. Other people can see it in you if you believe in it.
Definitely.
So that's something that kind of got me off guard. Caught me off guard.
Honestly, what that is too, it's kind of like the idea that your vibe attracts your tribe, essentially. Yeah. So if you kind of look at it, so even when I like had brought that up to you that one day when I was saying like, or you hear me say like, I knew you're one of us, because a lot of that comes from understanding like how I work in the world and like how I operate, and like finding myself in different places, and my vibe is going to forever attract my tribe, but my tribe would be other people that I want to attract, which would be more energy like this to essentially recharge what it is I feel that I'm putting out. Therefore, if I'm spending time around you, or if I'm finding myself in these different and oftentimes creative spaces, I'm noticing that, hey, it's a lot more of people who have similar backgrounds as I do, or remind me of myself in different ways. And that's because my vibe goes out as almost, this wave goes out, this ripple effect, and it brings back in, more people who are very, caught on that wave. And then I'm like, oh, okay, so, you're like me too. Okay. Oh, you're like, okay, big bet. You know what I'm saying? So like, I honestly don't even remember what the question was, but definitely, definitely to say that, like, I think, definitely to say, like, other Indigo children will find themselves in other people, because a lot of it is, like, you've known that person before in a different life, but you now, like, conscious you might not necessarily recognize it, but subconscious you is like, oh, hey, good to see you again. You know what I mean? Like, oh, hey, we found each other. We met it. We're here for a reason, and then you'll, share a story or have, conversation to understand why it was that you were supposed to have that relationship with that person that was supposed to be reciprocative in the way of, oh, okay, like, I'm going to consistently put out this type of energy into the world. You're doing something similar. If we do it together, watch us charge each other up. You know what I mean? So that's normally how that process could work. Not necessarily normal, but that's how that process can typically work. Oftentimes it's just like a lot of people think like it's like Professor X from the X-Men rolling in, like,
I know.
Exactly. Hey, we found one. Yeah. But it's really like, oh, hey, like, okay, we're here for a reason. Like, this is good.
Some people that are pretty big that believe in this stuff, I could be butchering it. It's either, or it might even be both, but I know the Flatbush Zombies, the hip hop group, they believe in it. I think Earth Gang believes in it too.
Oh yeah, Earth Gang, yeah. But the Underachievers,
yeah.
Capital Steez, R.I.P., Joey Badass, all of those guys, yeah.
But they were saying, like, in an interview about Indigo Children, that everyone, in a sense, is an Indigo child.
Definitely.
So I'm so confused about that, then. How can everyone, if it's...
Well, because more so the idea, because, again, these are more so just kind of labels, too.
Yeah.
But, like, everybody is multidimensional. And just having that understanding and, like, being aware in that is more so what not necessarily sets you apart, but, like, having that open mind to knowing that you are multidimensional, you exist in these different ways and stuff like that. But tapping more into what that potential is about is what, like, having the drive to tap into what that is more about is what more so takes you to that next level, because then you understand more, you continue to learn some more and continue to grow in that, and that's what opens that up for you, like, oh wow, I must be different, or my purpose must serve something greater than just blank. So it's like, that is kind of like, it's kind of just this idea of, like, where oftentimes religion will, sometimes divide people amongst, like, oh, we're right. It's kind of like that episode of South Park where, like, they get to hell and then, like, they ask, like, who was right? And then he was like, oh, it was the Mormons. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, shout out to Max Mormon fam. But it's kind of like complete opposite of that, where it's like, oh, like God is in all of us, and, like, in this omnipresent way of, like, but it's what we view to be God, which again is even just another label, but this higher consciousness or this higher being exists within all of us. Again, that education of self, or educate or educe, once you bring that out of yourself, like, being able to do that part is what is like, oh, okay, like, you were able to take it to the next level, kind of like in the movie Matilda, like, that wasn't like she wasn't virtually different than anybody else. She just, like, really honed in on that skill of, like, oh, I'm going to continue to really strengthen my mind every day, or tap into, like, whatever it is that makes me feel like I'm different from my family, or makes me feel like I'm different from other people and stuff like that. Continue to tap in on that, work in on that, want to know more about that. And that's what it offered her, was that telekinesis or telepathy or whatever. But that all came from her, like, oh, I feel different. Let me understand more about why I feel so different. And then that brought out the power within. You know what I'm saying? So, like, it's like anybody could do it, but not everybody wants to do it.
My perspective on what the Flatbush Zombies were saying when they said everyone's a Indigo child, I think they may have been generalizing, like, what I do, because in a sense, maybe they were talking about everyone in the sense of being, like, millennials, everyone. Ooh. Because, like, all the millennials are, like, really able to learn things at much a faster rate because of the internet. A lot of them end up being school shooters. A lot of them end up being, like, rebels, or free thinking in a sense, or they turn into like people who are just obsessed with social media and stuff. I feel like millennials nowadays, they either go on their own path or they get sucked in the system, which is being part of Instagram and all those social media things and just being focused on vanity metrics, stuff like that.
Right.
So when I think of, and I'm still a little skeptical in Indigo people, but I think maybe they're talking about, because when you talk about Indigo people, and I think it's been revamped, honestly. I think it's a conversational piece now versus when it first started. Even like when I watched the Vice documentary, which is like one of the top thing you'll see when you type in Indigo Children on YouTube, Vice. And Vice, it's becoming a thing if Vice kind of looks into that type of shit, because they're always into quirky, weird shit, but it's shit that's about to break. They're never on really, really down low type shit that no one's ever going to like pick up onto, And what I noticed was that their interview for like the Indigo people stuff was like 2 to 3 years ago, and that's honestly 2 to 3, maybe 4,
fairly recent.
Is when like the internet really, really, really broke and everyone completely used it. Everyone has an iPhone at this point. It honestly hasn't been that long since the iPhone was like a huge, huge household item, because the iPhone itself was made in 2007, and now everyone, either has an iPhone or something really close to iPhone. So I think that's really when like you can really tell who's a millennial or not, in a sense. So I think it's just being a rebel is maybe what they're saying, and being a millennial.
Yeah, I mean, like one way to definitely look at it too is kind of like, it's also been kind of broken down where like it does kind of come in these waves where it was like there were Indigo Children that it came around the time like what would have been like the 50s, 60s, 70s time, and they would have essentially came and laid down the framework for like the next generation to come behind and then grow within type of deal. So then it's kind of like, but I mean, to what you're saying, like definitely so, like I do think that like things like Instagram or like social media or like different devices like that are definitely used to be like or made to be divisive amongst like groups and stuff like that. And I think that like a lot of that is holding back the potential of a lot of people from getting to that next level of like higher consciousness, because a lot of time like people are more so focusing on what they think to be higher consciousness or like a high level of blank as being like, oh, hella followers or like, hella like material worldly things like that. But like I think that the internet taking off in the way that it did around that time like really tried to kind of not necessarily slow down a lot of people's progression from getting to that point, but definitely did like put in a good barrier or like a very tall hurdle for people to try to hop over who are like, oh, I could search for this higher sense of self and essentially hit the avatar state, or, I could continue to post with these, hella hashtags and, hashtag like for like, and I mean, we've all been there for sure. You know what I'm saying?
Like for like.
Definitely dropped a few photos of the Burger King on the IG and, hashtag Nike, but, you know how it goes. Gotta get your follows up, but, at the same time, gotta get your mind up too. So, I mean, I think like definitely one thing to always keep in mind too when it comes to like indigos, star seeds, crystals, all of that jazz is just like these are definitely just people who like felt as if like they needed to rebel or were constantly in positions that were not necessarily set up for them to win in the first place, so that they could rebel or go against the traditional norm to get to whatever that purpose is. So if you're ever like someone like who has felt like, oh wow, I don't think this is for me, or everybody's telling me to go this way, my heart's telling me to go the other way, because that'll oftentimes lead you in the direction of following your heart and then opening your mind at the same time to all the joys that'll come out of that.
Right.
And I think a lot of that is kind of getting lost in like how powerful the internet is growing to be, and like like no one's necessarily following their heart, they're just following other people. So it's like that definitely, like with that interview being a few years ago and to like where we are now, it's like like I think at that time that had been probably like 2000, I think 17, 18 time, and like maybe a little bit back, but anyways, at that time, like that was definitely a time where the internet did not have the presence that it has today. And a lot of that too is, I think, influenced by music and stuff. But like then to now, like, yeah, it's been, I feel like indigos were much more active at that time as opposed to now, where like it seems like it's almost something anybody could just like claim but not necessarily have the understanding of, because it's like commercialized.
Yeah.
But yeah, man.
What are your opinions on the perspective that, like, parents label their kids as indigo children so that they don't have to label them as having ADD or ADHD or?
I mean, honestly, I wish more parents would do that, because I think that so it's kind of like a double-edged sword with that. It's like a lot of times, a lot of indigo children will be labeled like as ADHD or different, and then like, you know, Big Pharma hits you with like, hey, give your kid this, give your kid that, and then now all of a sudden, you know, your kid is just like a vegetable sitting in the back of class, but essentially like neutralizing that part of themselves that was able to take it to that next level, to the point where you almost get conditioned to be scared to take it there, because you don't want to, you know, keep having to take these pills or stuff like that. So it's like understanding that even a long time ago, like people like indigo children, or even like people who like have schizophrenia or anxiety or things like that, a lot of people like that were actually revered as like gods and like mystics and stuff like that, who were different people who could think in different ways or could think faster than other people, or had like, you know, different voices speaking to them that were oftentimes telling them something that was like what was looked at like traditionally as, oh wow, that's hella crazy that, you know, Bob's talking to himself, but Bob was onto some shit, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, I think with parents that like actually will acknowledge that, oh yeah, you know, my kid, I think they might be an indigo. I think that that's a beautiful thing, because that must mean that the parent has like enough understanding in themselves to like even want to classify their kid as that, as opposed to like the way the society looks at, you know, kids having, you know, learning disabilities or stuff like that. I think parents calling their kids that is like a beautiful thing. Like I know for at least my experience, my family didn't necessarily nurture a lot of my spiritual needs, if you will. So I mean, a lot of that I had to come into later on in my adult life, and I mean, definitely, you know, makes the experience that much more like sweeter, and I appreciate it more. However, would have definitely, you know, not taken as long if my parents would have just been like, hey, you could find more kids like you know, that are really bad in school, but you know, incredible out in the world. You know what I'm saying? And no cocky shit, but you know, we out here.
But what if it comes back down to that cult mentality then, in a sense? That what if it's like an inner city family that's not doing well, they don't have the financial stability to go to a therapist or get those prescriptions behind the counter and things like that. So instead of actually acknowledging that their kids have problems, they're just like, okay, he's an indigo, and that makes it way less on me if my kid has these certain problems. Because there must be a difference between being an indigo kid and maybe being a rebel, and then being like a pyromaniac and just wanting to burn down shit.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I think a lot of it too is definitely, that's actually a great ass point, by the way. But I think like a lot of it too is like you okay, so yeah, you will have like, yeah, you could have like, you know, indigo kid, you know, rebelling against blank, and then, you know, the pyromaniac also rebelling against blank. However, like the difference in between those two things is like the end goal for both of them. So like, you know, the pyromaniac, where they might have rebelled against, you know, the system, family, you know, whatever it may be, and, you know, we're into, you know, like, you know, pyrotechnics and stuff like that. Their end goal might not have necessarily been to bring a change to the world that was positive, or like, you know, offer like a like an actual generational, like, oh, I'm here to really change something, or change the vibration of, you know, people, or bring the earth to where it should be. Like, you know, their end goal might have just been something a little different, which is fine as well too, as opposed to indigo children who will oftentimes just have like have an end goal that they don't necessarily understand yet, but know that it is deeply rooted in something positive for other people that doesn't have to do with them. So oftentimes, I'd like to, the example that you bring up, like with pyromaniacs or anybody interested in pyrotechnics, I think a lot of that, and I mean, anybody, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that is something where, like, you will bring that, like, you'll set fire to things, but that is more so a self-fulfilling thing for you, like, to maybe have a control over that, or watch something burn, or like to, like, that seems like much more of a self-fulfilling thing, as opposed to indigos do much more selfless type things, in the sense of like, I feel I have a purpose for other people, where someone who might want to set something on fire all the time is like, I have a purpose for me, which is set this shit on fire. You know what I mean? So it's like that difference of like, yeah, we both are rebels. We both share this sense of, non-conforming to blank. However, I myself am non-conforming because I have a bigger purpose for everybody else that is
Right.
supposed to serve everybody else, as opposed to, I'm non-conforming and setting stuff on fire, but that's really more so internally servicing me. You know what I mean?
So then, how do I phrase this? So basically, yeah, that's a basically solid explanation though, that Indigo Children are basically supposedly here to help people versus hurt people. But when you talk about like Star Kids and Crystal Kids, that makes me think of, I don't know. And another thing, which is just me being fucking weird, because I think it's funny to like, school shootings, nothing to joke around about at all.
Right.
But like, you can easily label serial killers and school shooters as like white people. They're cuckoo. Or even when it comes to like cult type stuff. So when I think of like about Indigo Children and stuff, the fact that it was made by like a white lady, which I don't think race is a huge thing, but it being like a white lady, and when you think of like healing crystals and charging your batteries and shit like that, that's usually like a white type people thing that like go into like those mineral shops to buy crystals and shit like that.
I mean, that's actually more so like a like a colonized idea by. I don't want to say white people stole that, but definitely because it's funny. Like, you would be surprised. Like, race doesn't necessarily play a larger role, but more so ethnicity and like culture and stuff like that. So like different cultures will have always called it something different. Like,
Right.
like you'll look at a lot of more like, and I really don't want to, I don't want to get it wrong, but like a lot more like Asian countries who will, call it, chakras or, chi, stuff like that. Or like African countries who have always, kind of believed in like, for example, like even in like Jamaica, which, not African country, well, I guess kind of, but like even in Jamaica, like, they say like, obia, like, which is like bad spirit, like negative, like demon, stuff like that. But like, has always been this idea that those things could like inhabit, people, children, like that is a universal idea that like a higher consciousness or a higher blank or like, that like that can be achieved by doing X, like whatever. So like, like Haitians or, different marginalized groups have it in their cultures where, voodoo, stuff like that, like, like witchcraft or Wiccans or, brujas and stuff like that. Like that has always been alive because I think that was, I don't necessarily know where that always came from, but like, like white people have like, ghost hunters, stuff like that, like, we got, running away from ghosts, you know what I mean? So it's
Right.
like, that's kind of always been there, but like even like the like healing crystals and stuff like that, like that is like forever something that I think like I'll never know necessarily where that kind of came from, but how that'll always play into like, like I carry a purple amethyst around with me everywhere I go type deal, and that's like, for like blocking negative energy and stuff like that. But like that was actually like, that's like an African thing, and then like, a lot of white people who adopted the idea of, oh, like, okay, their spirituality is practiced this way, but ours, like we want to adopt that. Then they started doing that. Then you
Right.
walk to the mineral shop and the white girl with dreads is,
Yeah.
telling you about Tiger Stone. So it's like, I don't know. Race definitely plays an interesting role in it all too, because it's like a lot of times brown and black families won't necessarily be as open to the idea of their kids being, indigos and stuff like that, because a lot of that is kind of rooted in PTSS, which is post-traumatic slave syndrome. And Joy DeGruy, excuse me, she wrote a book about that, which is more so the idea that like you as a black person in the world experiencing post-traumatic slave syndrome, that comes from things that the slave masters used to do to our ancestors way back when, and those generational traumas that were never unpacked.
Right.
So then move into why it is your family treats you how they do. So for example, there's the example where it's like, oh, like black people have sometimes bad relationships with their families because what would happen would be that slaves back in the day, when the slave master would come around to try to take their kids, the family would be very quick to be like, oh, like, you don't want this one, he's stupid, or you know, he's look how bad he is at this, or essentially like depreciate the value of their own kids
To
so
save
that way
them in a
to
sense.
save them. But the kids wouldn't know that that was
Yeah.
is what that they, oh my god, is what that they were doing. So you know, it kind of built up this, you know, like, we black people almost just kind of forgot to stop playing that role of like, oh hey, my kid sucks, because they just conditioned the mind that way. So it's like, now you move forward, you hear that your kid might be, you know, special or have a sixth sense or something like that. You know, we revert right back to that, oh, you know, couldn't be my kid, or you know, whatever,
Right.
you know what I'm saying, or not open to even having that dialogue or that conversation, or because a lot of this, like Indigo, stuff like that, a lot of that's emotion based too. And you know, I mean, our community's not the best when it comes to, you know, talking our emotions and things like that. So it's like, you know, as opposed to other communities, you know, you look at the white community, because even if you notice in that documentary, a lot of the people who were saying, oh, my kids are indigos, a lot of those are white people.
Yeah.
You know, and that is because, you know, that's just something that, you know, they've had the more accessibility to having those kind of conversations, that dialogue, or you know, even like being able to have that conversation, to not worry about what would come after that. So I mean, race definitely plays, I would say, or ethnicity, race, whatever you want to call it. Like, you know, it definitely plays in there for sure. But you know, just kind of like understanding like where each or how each region, you know, used to maybe even look at it, and how they look at it today is like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
I think it doesn't. Don't you feel that like Indigo Children fall under that astrology type deal
Definitely.
though?
Oh
But
yeah.
then if you believe in Indigo Children, which therefore in a sense might mean you believe in astrology, doesn't that go against religion?
I mean,
Because can you be a indigo child and like as a generalization you can say I'm an indigo child and I'm
Right.
Christian, but when you get down to it, if you told like your pastor or preacher or whatever, oh I'm an indigo child, and you're like in Christianity, is that and that person knew about what an indigo child was, would they be like, oh no you're not, that's against our religion, or like how does that play out?
I mean, I think that definitely plays out kind of in this way of like, like I think that's why a lot of times for Indigo Children, like there is that separation of like us and the church, because it almost kind of like offers this idea that like, oh, like, you know, we think we're better than blank, or like we have this accessibility to like this higher source that you don't have. So you know, what you're talking about can't be correct, because you know, like, you know, that's just not how it works, because I'm more powerful than blank, or like I have some type of authority over whatever. And I mean, I think I think at least for like Indigo Children that are like still like in church or whatever and whatnot, like a lot of times I feel like Indigo Children will find themselves still in those positions because they've yet to break away from it. And like even for myself, I know that like I went to Southern, you know, family was Southern Baptist. I had tried to look into Catholicism. I became a Mormon for a little bit, you know, so shout out to BYUI. But yeah, I became a Mormon for a little bit, was looking into Islam, like all of those different things, but still like understood that I think, you know, it's just called something different everywhere. Like you could be in the Mormon church, you could be someone who holds the Melchizedek priesthood, and that is an elder in the church, which allows you to go on missions and also perform blessings over people, which is you praying to God and having, you know, essentially this type of, you know, energy into you that allows you to place two hands on top of somebody's head and give them a blessing. And you know, I mean, I feel like the other people, they might look at that like, what type of shit?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But then, you know, you tell somebody that you know, can talk to the universe and feel that, and they might also be like, what type of shit? So, I mean, you know, it's definitely just kind of that clash between, you know, where you stand in it. And like, it's a very like, it's a very individual process too. You know what I mean? So I think at least for indigos and like indigos in the church, or indigos trying to be a part of church, I don't want to say you can't have both, but eventually it will. I think it comes down to like, which one are you going to put the time and energy into?
Right.
Because, you know, one will be more divisive than the other. And I mean, you know, not to point fingers at either or, but you know, it's, you know, you can't always have your cake and eat it too.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I mean, I think that's kind of how that usually ends up going. But you know, it's definitely, you know, it's an individual process too. You know, it all happens within anyway. So like, oftentimes church will tell you not to feel the way that you feel because they're like, God, like, that's not God. That's
the devil.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? They're like, what the?
Yeah.
You feel like you could talk to the sky? You know what I'm saying? Like, nah, don't do that. You should be talking to God.
Do you think indigo people are supposed to be like perfect people then? Like in a sense, like if you're an indigo child, that means you're outgoing and you're creative and you're passionate. Or can an indigo person, I can't even, like indigo children, what is the plural for it?
I'm so done. I mean, you can say indigos.
Okay.
Hey, ho,
indigo.
ho.
That just reminds me of like weed or something. Yo, you tried this indigos lately? Like, I don't know, but like.
I mean, was the weed purple when you stopped it?
Fuck.
Think about it.
I just think that like, can you be an indigo indigo person and be that like shy guy in your room and not doing anything? Or if you're supposed to be if an indigo person is supposed to be someone that's here to help build the community and be someone of interest that helps build people up, can you be that indigo person that's all quiet, or do you know that you're an indigo child and you're always outgoing?
I mean, honestly, the indigo person probably is that person that's like the shy, quiet person in their room. Because oftentimes, like, a lot of indigo, like kids, indigo children, indigo, whatever you want to call it, like, we were always the ones that were the most misunderstood, like misunderstood youth, like, didn't feel that we ever fit in type of deal. And a lot of that was because understanding at such a young age, like, okay, like there's just something different about me than other people. And that was like, a lot of that is something that, like, I feel like, you have to tap more into, and then you become this person that, steps out and helps the world in whatever way. But I mean, even just by existing in the way that you do is what is like helping the world get to the vibrational frequency that it would need to be on to be as positive as it is. Because it's like, so like, for example, like star seeds are, essentially another wave of the volunteers that chose to come here that, can more so like remember and kind of pinpoint the star system of which that they came from. So it's like, there's different ones, but like there's even one called Sirius. And I thought that like this was always something like an interesting thought. So like there's a star system named Sirius, and
a radio program, Sirius XM. It all makes sense.
Yeah, no, I mean literally. I mean, you know the logo for that is like the tower with the waves coming off.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I mean, that's just something emitting out the waves that's not doing anything but just standing. You know what I mean? And I feel, that indigos work in that very similar way of like, just being you is what like the vibrational frequency that you're on is already different. So that's what like just being you is like, that's already flushing out into everywhere that you go. And then the more that you continue to learn about that and seek knowledge on that, that's where, the frequencies they extend out even farther and touch even more people. The more that you continue, like the more that you have to build within, then the more that you can help without, or help all the way out. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, okay, like I could be the shy guy in my room, but at the same time, like me choosing to live that type of life is keeping me from being the other way. So like, I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but like they were saying, where it's like the same type of people who had taken this test that said that like they were going to go up far on the corporate ladder, they were going to be these type of people, they were going to live this great life, make all this type of money, and like these type A people were also had all of the same characteristics and traits to be sociopaths and serial killers.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like, but indigos, that's where we come in. We have that agency to choose. You know what I'm saying? Where it's
free
it's
will.
Like, I mean, yeah. You know what I'm saying? You could, call it that. Yeah. It's a free like that. But that exactly like this. Like even go back to the pyromaniac thing that you're talking about, or like the school shooter thing or whatever. It's like those are people who like I feel like maybe didn't necessarily choose to live like that. Right. You know what I mean? Like wanting to bring harm or stuff like that. Like. Were maybe socialized or conditioned in that type of way, but like did not choose to do anything other than that. Whereas like, indigo is like, yeah, I might just be, the shy, misunderstood person in the room and whatnot, but like I could be doing blank, but I'm choosing to, let these vibrations like bounce off and do positive things. You know what I'm saying? I'm not choosing to let them go out and, I think I'm gonna go set the house on fire and not let anybody get out. You know what I mean? So it's like, I mean, definitely indigo is not perfect people at all. Like oftentimes have always felt like we were imperfect or like damn, like what's wrong with me, or like why do I feel this way, or like why do I wear a beanie and sunglasses everywhere I go, you know what I'm saying? But like, you know, understanding what's behind that is like, and not like that's like where the real power's in. That's why it's like, oh wow, like okay, and these niggas are actually all right.
So Batman could be an Indigo Child.
I mean, honestly, off of the way that he was brought up, I mean, more than likely, you know, because I mean, you know, you look at it, that's all he's trying to do is, you know, understood his purpose was greater.
Yeah.
He didn't choose a 9 to 5. He chose to beat up bad guys from 9 to 5. You know what I mean?
Do you think that your life has changed since you? Because, like we said, like emotion. Fuck, I'm just gonna call you Bryan or Emotion. It's either one. Either one works.
Comes to mind.
But what you were kind of saying, and like what Indigo Children say, everyone could, in a sense, can be an indigo person.
Just gotta believe.
But does it give you like some sort of release or like joy? Like how has it even really changed your life now that you feel that you're an indigo versus just being like, okay, I'm just another person?
Extremely. I'll tell you, like, honestly, I really hope, like, I won't use their name, but I really hope that if they do, actually, I'll send it to them. But I'm gonna tell you this story, and like, this was like it's times like this that make it like, oh wow, like this is what we're here to do. So for example, long story short, I did this artist showcase like a little while back, and I had did it 2 nights. The first night did not have the beanie and sunglasses, and when I was talking to this person that was there was something about them that just kept resonating with me, and I was like, I don't know what it is, but I need to connect with them. And I had connected with them, and as I was talking to them, like they were wearing like a mask over their face essentially, and it only had 2 holes in it for their eyes.
What the fuck?
No, check this shit out. So like hella dope. I was like, oh wow, like not only is there, no, honestly, not only is their art hella dope, like their vibe that they're giving off, like I'm like, there's something about that is like, I was like, I feel that for whatever reason. Anyway, go over there, we have conversation, we talk, and then there's a piece of artwork that they have that I couldn't take my eyes off. It was like it was speaking to me, which was ironic because like the piece was basically like a face, but the mouth was open, but it was sewn shut. But it did feel as if it was speaking to me, and I was like, that is crazy. Anyway, talk to them, we have just a good talk, and I just come out with it, and I'm like, my angels around me are telling me that I need to ask you this, I need to tell you this, but I'm like, are you an indigo child? And they're like, you know about that? And I'm like, I am one. We have good conversation. They give me a hug. Like, I'm like, yeah, you know, real positive. And right before, like, I get done, like, with that conversation, I tell them, I'm like, hey, like, it was, like, they were like, it was good to meet you. And I said, it was good to see you again. And then, you know, I just kept going. Never met this person day in my life. And now here's where the crazy part comes in. As I'm sitting in the car, and I'm, like, on the phone with my homegirl, Sarah. Shout out to Sarah. She's another indigo child. I'm talking to my lady V, another one. And she's like, what was that talk about? What were you guys talking about? And I explained the conversation to them. And I'm like, there was something about that person, but I don't know what. I pull out my phone. I go to their Instagram. I find the very painting that I bought. And I'm like, this was the one. And then like my girl, she's like, did you see the caption, like the name of that painting? And it was called Decadence. And that same night, I had performed a poem called Decadence. In my poem, the first line is like, my soul remembers yours from long ago. So when I had like talked to them, right after they handed me the painting and I was leaving, they said, good to meet you. I was like, hey, nice to see you again. Not even, you know, building off of any of that, not even, you know, whatever, but it all just made sense. To then full circle it back around, not only did my poem, something something that meant a lot to me that I had written, which was like my creative outlet, you know, that matched their creative outlet, which also was called Decadence, which also I'm saying, hey, like my soul remembers yours from long ago. That night, really talking to this person. The craziest thing about it all was that, again, I didn't have on the beanie and the sunglasses, but they had a mask over their face. That's what I knew what was drawing me to them, because I was like, I feel that. Wow. We both continue to cover ourselves, you know, for this, like everybody looks at us any type of way, whatever, but so misunderstood to the point where this, you know, whatever is not, you know, this outward like whatever is just like an experience for other people. But I'm looking at them like I can truly feel that, because this is what that's what I do. Because I was not doing that, that's what brought me to them, because I was like, that's familiar. I was like, oh, okay. And that's how the connection is made. That vibration, that vibe, my vibe truly attracted my tribe, because I was like, whoa, like, okay, shit, even when I'm not doing this, I'm doing this because I'm doing it through you. And we had that connection, which, I mean, obviously this is much more of a singular experience. Like, not everybody's going to have something like this, but, emotion based is where like a lot of this lives, which is, you can't, logic will say one thing, but you can't write, there's no science behind something like that. You know what I'm saying? That's an in the moment. That's, they could have been to the next show, or I could have came another day, or I could have didn't even have to be there, type of deal. You know what I mean? But for whatever reason, if you believe you deserve it, universe will serve it. And the universe served me by putting that person in my life and putting me there in that moment to make that connection and turn it into whatever it's supposed to be. You know what I mean?
But couldn't some people mark that up as a coincidence? Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you could definitely call that a coincidence, but I think the universe is too smart to have coincidences. I think the universe, I feel like everything is intentional. You know what I'm saying? I think that, like the coincidence, the only coincidence that I believe happened with that was that we were in the same room at the same time.
Yeah.
But even with that, you take it back even farther enough to, that was something that they had to apply for. That was something that I had to apply for months ago. So, I mean, would it be a coincidence that, wherever in the world in that, two people would find themselves in the state of Washington to also see the same Facebook ad that we would also feel that we need to apply for,
right,
that we would also find ourselves on the same night in the same place at the same time, doing the same essential creative art to, have a conversation to then find out that both of our pieces had the same title and essentially the same meaning. I mean, yeah, I guess you can call that a coincidence, but I mean, I don't know. That's kind of where that, that emotion piece does come in, where it's
right,
like, all of that might have been coincidence, but the feeling was real, and that's always, something that I think other Indigo Children or other people who are willing to take that step of, hey, I mean, all of this stuff looks coincidental, but I'm willing to believe that it's something much more than that. That's that when you cross that threshold, that's the, okay, actually, I do believe that was not coincidental. Because even if I take it back farther enough, it's like, I'm not even from Washington. So it's like, I could have never been here. I could have never even been at that showcase because I could have never even been in the state, But it's like, all of these things played out perfectly, like months in advance for us to make that connection, And I feel like things like that are very intentional.
I wonder if scientists are happy people, because when it comes down to it, like a lot of scientists, like Neil deGrasse Tyson or any of those type of people, will be the first to be like, Christianity is just a way to make people feel closer to something,
right?
So they feel more sane living. Like there's a higher power. Like a lot of people don't want to think that there's a chance that once you die, you're just dead.
Yeah.
So, and at the end of the day, we're all just particles, and somehow our particles evolved to the point that we can talk and have free thinking, and we're not tigers or lions or bears.
Oh my.
That type of stuff. I wonder, like, at the end of the day, like, believing just makes people, believing's not a bad thing at all, but it, like, helps make people feel sane when some things aren't sane.
Right. I mean, I think that is definitely one of those, like, no matter what, it's nice to believe in something.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, if you didn't, what would be the point, right? So I feel like even for Indigo Children, like, when this is all said and done, whatever that this is, and come to find out none of this was actually, what we thought it was or whatever, I wouldn't even be upset because I'm glad that I had enough in myself to believe in something bigger than myself for the time being that seemed that it brought joy to other people or, whatever. So I think that kind of, I feel like that might be a synonymous idea that maybe scientists might share as well too, where it's like, I know how like scientists had said that, people who have these high IQs or do things like that oftentimes are very lonely people or find themselves in, very negative spaces because they're like, oh man, I already understand life so well.
Well, Elon Musk is definitely a lonely guy.
It's true. Very true. You know what I'm saying? But it's like, I feel like, even with indigos and stuff like that, like we could be that way, but we all know what that's like. Like no point to do any of that shit. So
yeah.
I'd much rather, I wowould much rather have something to believe in.
Be part of.
Yeah. Be a part of something bigger than me than, go a whole life of, just, I don't think that was the case. It couldn't be, cause I'd probably just speed up the death process.
Yeah.
No point to get to that.
I just hate that trap that people use. Like, well, you don't lose anything if you don't believe in Jesus.
Oh,
You know?
Yeah.
Like, fuck.
Yeah, I've said that a few times in my old knocking on door adventures, but yeah, man. I mean, I don't know. I think it's definitely like even with the indigo thing too, bro. It's like it's just one of these things where it's like no matter what, whether you believe or you don't believe, like it's gonna happen regardless. Whatever needs to happen, and you know, I don't want to say like not believing means that you're just trying to like brush off the inevitable, but it's definitely like there's a plan for everybody that is much bigger than everybody, and understanding where your role could be in that plan is much more crucial than trying to believe that there isn't anything coming.
Right.
Whatever that is, whether it be God coming back or like a bunch of people like becoming huge stars or something like that, or like literal like stars like in the solar system type deal, just walking down the street. I mean, it could be anything, but
Or what is that one religion that believes everyone gets their own planet once they die?
I feel like
What is that Mormon? That's not Mormon, is it?
I feel like that's like one of the, so there's like three different types of like there's the LDS, then there was the FLDS, and then there was the RLDS. They don't really use that one anymore, but like in those, like none of those like kind of had that. It was more so like this idea of like you could go to three different kind of like celestial, terrestrial, or telestial, like, and these were like three different realms of like, oh, you did good, you did really good, you did fucking great. Like,
It's
you'll
like
go
Avatar
to these
type shit when you choose.
No,
like,
pretty much.
I want to be a mystic.
No, like kind of like that. Like it was really like you could like, I mean, I was okay. All right, well, celestial. I mean, I was pretty good. Like, okay, yeah, here's this. But like I thought you were about to say the one about the religion where like this like there's like the lizard people, and they like, you know what I'm talking about?
Shit, like the people that think what's his name's a lizard.
No, like it maybe it's
What's
like
his name? You know, the guy who created who is that one really awkward guy that drinks his water really weird?
Oh wow,
Fuck.
That's hilarious.
What's his name again?
I feel like I know.
It's not the creator of Facebook. It's
It's
What's his name? God damn it.
Feel myself. Oh wow, that's funny because
Lizards. See, I'm gonna look it up right now.
Yeah, because there is a religion of people who follow, or there aren't religion people. There's a group of people who follow a religion where they believe in like lizard people are gonna take over the earth at some point in time, and like I think they believe that everybody's a lizard and just needs to come out of this like vessel cocoon, and on some, like,
Mark
Spider-Man.
Zuckerberg.
Mark, yeah, Facebook guy.
Yeah, is it Facebook?
Yeah, he's creator of Facebook.
Who's the guy that? Oh, I was thinking of the guy. Yeah, he is the creator of Facebook. I was thinking of Joe Rogan had the guy who created Twitter on. So I was getting them mixed up for some reason.
Shout out to Tom from MySpace. I hope you're still out there, Tom. If you hear this, my man.
But yeah, Mark Zuckerberg. People think he's like a lizard person.
Really? I mean, you got to be a chameleon in the streets nowadays. So I mean, you could be.
Shit.
But yeah, man. I mean, I don't know. I just think it's when it comes to like religion and stuff like that. Like, I feel like that's even just the word religion is just like a label essentially. Like, if you do something religiously, like, it's my religion to wear a beanie and sunglasses, pretty much.
Yeah, religiously, like yeah.
So,
routinely,
I mean,
even.
Yeah,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
That.
So yeah, man. It's just like I feel like with the indigo thing, like you could look at that as like a religion or whatnot, but I mean, I guess religiously, what we do is just consistently bring vibes that are supposed to do what they're supposed to do for the earth, or for the people that inhabit it. It's a very selfless type thing. Like, it's kind of like I'll tell people like I'm a good guy, not a nice guy, and like the very fine line difference between that is like nice guys will do things that benefit like themselves, good guys will do things that benefit you. So like Indigo's kind of operating that same way too. We're like, yeah, like I like as an indigo, I'm gonna do something that is much more selfless and more so serving for the general population. And a lot of times, like a lot of the work that we're doing now won't even be seen by our generation at all. The same people that had came before us and laid down the frameworks for us to come and really pick it up. A lot of them, we don't even know. Because at the time they didn't even know that's what they were here to do.
The fact that we're in America now, the steps they
America.
took.
No, I mean,
even get us here,
like literally the people that did come and set these waves down, like essentially you could look at it like they came, laid the framework down, and then moved on into like us as babies and came back and were like, okay, now I'm coming back to work on it again. You know what I'm saying? It just took 15, 16, 17 years for that person that leading the conscious mind to be like, I feel like there's something about me that's different. For the subconscious version to be like, yes, keep looking in, we're here, and then come back and be like, oh, that's what I was working on. You know what I'm saying?
But yeah,
man.
I think we covered it. Honestly.
I think so.
I think we could still do a few minutes on our goals for this podcast. I think.
Let's do it.
One big goal of mine is that I want to cover topics wherein other YouTube videos or something, they'll say it's the topic, but then they'll lead on to other stuff. You know, you always get that, like, it's always clickbait where they're like, oh, we're going to talk about Indigo people, and then maybe it's like 15 minutes about Indigo people and then something else.
Right.
I want this podcast to be a place where people know if we're talking about Ted Bundy, the whole freaking episode is going to be on just Ted Bundy. If we're talking about freaking Indigo people, the whole episode's about Indigo people. You can start at the beginning, there's Indigo people, fast forward to the middle, still talking about Indigo people, at the end, okay, that's our podcast on Indigo people. Shit like that, you know?
Oh yeah, hell yeah. I definitely like on my part, I want to very similar goal, as well as like bring a lot of emotion to it and a lot of personal anecdote to whatever like topic that we talk about, if I feel that I could offer that. I feel like that is a very good way to try to relate to who's ever listening out there, and then, you know, make you maybe feel comfortable to try to relate to us, because I mean, really outside of this, really just two regular Joe Schmoes, you know what I'm saying? So definitely want to, you know, watch that unfold, and also watch whatever topics we get into, and see how you know, me and Blake could put our minds together and come up with some crazy content for you guys, pretty much. So
For sure.
Yeah, man.
And I want everyone to feel like they can be included to this. So if you're in the Seattle area, or you want to take a fucking trip down to be in Seattle just to be on an episode with us, that'd be awesome. We want everyone to feel included. You don't have to be a cult leader to be on this podcast. We just want genuine people. Anyone can be on this podcast that want to express their voice towards whatever topic it is of that episode. You know, you could just be a normal person. You could be a person you can either be the flat earther or someone who knows about flat earth things and want to either debate why it's not real or debate why it is real. Things like that, you know? So everyone should feel included in this podcast. And
Totally.
Yeah, this is something that's pretty big for both me and Emotion. Like I said, my main purpose right now is being a podcaster and giving people a voice through my main podcast, the NAST podcast. And once again, I'll let Emotion explain what his goal is when it comes to his art and crafts.
Yeah, totally. And right before I hop into that, definitely to piggyback off of what Blake is saying, like this podcast, you know, it's like a safe space. It's kind of like for the cinema buffs out there. If you've seen I Am Legend, yes. Will Smith, right? You know, when he's sitting at his desk every day and puts out his call to everybody that's like, hey, like anybody who's out there, if you're looking for shelter, I have that. If you're looking for food, I will feed you. If you're looking for company, we will do that. You know, I can be that for you.
If you're looking for dick, I got you.
Exactly. No, you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, you know where to find us. You know what I'm saying? IG, please. But, yeah, I mean, as far as me, you know what I'm saying? Emotion, the poet. Very honored and blessed to be here with my man, Blake. I think a lot of my goal, man, is definitely just to take this poetry thing to the next level and, you know, hit all of the goals that a lot of people told me I couldn't hit. And a lot of that being based in just doing it with my people, doing it with my friends, the closest people to me, but, you know, keeping it at the forefront that if you want to go fast, you got to go by yourself. But if you want to go far, you have to go together. So
yes.
Definitely why I'm glad to be doing this with Blake. Shout out to the team at Fundamental. And just, you know, wanting to hit these next pillars in our lives and these next chapters filled with just positivity, as well as just chasing our dreams. Never chasing the bag. The bag will chase you. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But you got to get your cardio up. So, you know, just trying to do that. You know, poetry, music, anything to express how I feel, what's going on with me, because I feel like if I keep that inside, that'd be detrimental to, you know, the indigo in me that's trying to help me actually get to these goals and stuff. Mm-hmm. And anybody who can relate to that, I mean, I encourage you to do the same thing too. If you have something that you know that you love to do, express that, get that out, you know, whether podcasting, radio, music, any of that jazz. But you got two people that always check it out. For sure. You know?
And for this podcast, another thing I want to point out is that we do, like I said in the beginning of the podcast, we do have our stage names that we use. Like I go by NAST for the NAST podcast. Bryan goes by Emotion the Poet for for his artistry type stuff. I don't even know what to describe because he does so many things, So, but when it comes to his like passion and his art and stuff like that, he goes by Emotion the Poet. But for this, we want to be like an open book for everyone to feel invited. So that's why I'm just going by my government name.
No, honestly.
Yeah,
I mean, since we're going by the governments, my real name is actually BJ. I'm junior. My father's name was also Bryan. I actually stopped going by BJ in middle school, obvious reasons.
Blowjob?
So, yeah, pretty much. So, once the teacher started laughing at that, too, I was like, this is not for me. So, went right back to Bryan. But, like Blake said, open book, and really just two guys sitting on a couch.
Yes.
So the casting couch, actually. So, if anybody is looking to get into that type of work, you know where to find us.
Yeah. We'll eventually have a good closer, but I think it's awesome that we're just being so like open with this first episode too. I want people to see our progress growing over time.
Oh yeah, man.
So this is the first episode, very raw and uncut, and this is Blake Burton. Wait, Blake Burton. That's another thing. I don't know how to pronounce my last name actually.
Really?
I sometimes say Ton Burton. Burton. I want to go by Blake Burton. Sometimes I don't even use the T. Burton.
Oh, that's funny. I sometimes this is Bryan Barnett or Bryan Barnett.
Yeah.
I feel that.
Damn. And that's another thing, guys. We both have the same initials, so that's pretty crazy.
Or is it a coincidence, Blake?
There we go. This is Blake Burton, and
this is Bryan Barnett, also known as Emotion the Poet, and thank you guys for listening.
And we're giving you the BBC.
My man.